Welcome everyone. Today is July 24th, 2019. Welcome to the EBC Evidence-Based Coaching Professional Series Webinar. I'm Dr. Terry Hildebrandt. I'm the Director of the Evidence-Based Coaching Program at the Fielding Graduate University. And the program today is a part of our coaching community of practice. And we will be talking about the importance of coaching skills for organization development professionals. And we're really excited to have three prominent guests today. There are scholar practitioners of Fielding and also other universities that they've attended. And each of them are practicing OD professionals and professional coaches who are using coaching skills in their OD practice. Today we have Dr. Dee Myers, and we have Dr. R. Carl Hebenstreit and Raquel Cosden. All of them are, again, graduates of Fielding in one or more programs. And I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves briefly with a question that is to tell us about your journey of incorporating coaching into your work as an organizational development consultant. So if we could start with Dr. Myers with a brief introduction and tell us about your journey.
Yeah, thank you, Terry. Happy to be here today. I came into the OD field from a coaching perspective, which was informed by an employment history in Fortune 500 companies, followed by working for many years with an entrepreneurial finance business that had to do with balance sheet management in financial institutions such as banks, credit card companies, insurance companies. From there, I started my own company. And today we have 7 full-time employees, and at any time we add in a minimum of 5 to 11 certified coaches for the work that we do with projects. And our work ranges with clients who are small, maybe 25 million to 150 billion in assets. My first degree many years ago was in international marketing, and then I fell in love with coaching, and I have 3 coaching certifications, one with evidence-based coaching through Fielding. Also received from Fielding my master's degree in OD as well as my PhD in human and organization development. I complement that with a lot of work I've done with Strozzi Institute for embodied leadership, because I think that's really important in transformative change, and then also studied at the Hudson Institute of Santa Barbara.
Great, thank you, Dr. Myers.
Thank you.
So let's hear from Dr. Hebenstreit.
Hi, Terry. Thanks. Wonderful to be here on the other end of the webcast and webinars instead of being...
Oh, can you speak up just a little bit, Carl? We have a little trouble hearing you.
Is that better? Or...
Yeah, much better. Thank you.
Okay, great. I need to be closer to the laptop then. So my name is Carl Hebenstreit. I am a graduate of the Fielding Evidence-Based Coaching Certification Program. And I also have a PhD in organizational psychology from California School of Professional Psychology, now also known as Alliant International University. And my journey to get into the world of organization development really started in human resources.
Hey, Carl, you're fading in and out quite a bit here. You might have to dial in potentially or do you have a headset?
I have a headset. Let me get that.
Okay, while you're getting your headset rolling, let's talk with Raquel Cosden.
Okay, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, you sound great.
Great. Okay, sounds good. I have a headset. So I came in from an organizational development background in human resources. So I did some outside work with big corporations and then came into the federal government. So maybe I have a bit different spin. I've been an internal organizational development consultant for it's been about 13 years with the government. And I have found, I just think this has been an amazing journey because I also have a coaching certification from the evidence-based coaching program, but originally came in as an organizational development consultant to fix the problem. And now realizing that a lot of the coaching techniques are working very well with the organizational development side of the house.
Great, thank you very much. Excellent. So Carl, say hello. Let's see if we have your audio running.
Hello. Let's see if we can have your audio running.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. Let's have you repeat your introduction.
Sure. Hi, my name is Carl Hebenstreit. I was a graduate of Fielding's evidence-based coaching certification program. And I came to that after I got a PhD from California School of Professional Psychology or Alliance International University in organizational psychology. And I got into the world of OD from the world of HR. And I started out in human resources right after my undergraduate degree at Rutgers. And I went and got a master's in human resource management from the Rutgers Graduate School of Management School of Labor Relations. So the journey was an evolution as I had been doing lots of different HR roles and wanted to evolve out of the traditional HR world and do what comes next, what's bigger, what's impactful, more impact, and actually more positive impact from a world of development as opposed to some of the HR roles that can have some unpleasantries that go along with them. And that's how I found out about Fielding, and I grew into the coaching program that way and developed a coaching practice. I've always been an internal employee. Right now I work at Genentech in South San Francisco. I'm calling you from there right now. And I've worked for other large organizations, starting out with Merck and AT&T and Bellcore and Biorad and EMC Corporation and Kaiser Permanente, some of the big ones that I've worked at. And I've also done some limited amount of consultant work in between roles. So that's given me some independent practitioner exposure and practice as well.
Great, thank you, Carl. And by the way, we were both in cohort 6 of the evidence-based coaching program. So
that's where I met Terry.
Carl and I graduated together from that particular program. Well, thank you all for the introductions. So how have you seen coaching support organizational transformation and teams? And let's start with Raquel.
Okay, so for us, I work with a primarily technical organization. They're very, I think we're probably one of the top hires of mathematicians and analysts in the world at this point. And this is a concept that is a little bit different for us. So when usually you're called in as an organizational development consultant to solve a problem. There's been a breakdown on the team, people aren't getting along, and no one really knows what happened because the structural analytical thinking isn't working as well. So I'm finding that it's a challenge because when we introduce sort of concepts of coaching and interpersonal skills, it's a little bit foreign for the people that we work with, and we have to sort of tread lightly as we go in to work through the coaching skills. In the beginning, I felt like this pressure to solve problems, but now I realize that the teams that we work with, they have to solve the problems. And so that's where I've been able to use some of the coaching techniques to sort of help them. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. So Dr. Myers, tell us a little bit about how you've seen coaching support organizational transformation in teams.
Great. I appreciate a lot of what Raquel said here, particularly the clients, they have to solve the problems. So well, the way we worked in the beginning was we were called in to do coaching because the business owner or the CEO was not seeing the change that they had expected with OD. So we started looking at what was going on with their business model and how the OD new structures were put in place and how the change is being described. So did a nice discovery piece there. And then what we found the missing link was that people were forgotten about. So a great structure was set up, but they were not looking at, are the people ready for change? How do we get them ready for change? Do they have the competency? So what we actually saw is people were digging in more to their silos, changes being hampered. So we actually went backwards and said, okay, what do you want? Who do you have as people? What do the people want? And worked with the people through coaching, the participants through coaching, for them to decide what they thought the organization needed, what the team needed. Like we would start with the leadership team, the most senior team, and now we're actually doing board work and change as well. And then the individuals. So what was lovely is to coach the team for them to decide what they want, and then coach the individuals in the team so they support the team in their change, which is a lot of fun. I have more I can share there, but I'll pause.
All right, excellent. So I think you're bringing up some critical pieces that you can do: individual coaching, team coaching, along with organizational transformation and OD interventions. So we'll come back to that, talk some more about it. But let's hear from Dr. Carl.
So Terry, it's actually very interesting. Right now, the entire Roche and Genentech organization is undergoing a massive culture change to becoming a culture that's more, just like many other companies, in fact, most other companies, towards agility. Everything needs to be more agile, faster, more responsive to respond to the VUCA environment, and how do we anticipate and prepare and change on a dime, turn on a dime. So in response to rolling out traditional interventions of training programs and leadership development programs, seen that it's not just the event that happens, but it's also coupled with, okay, so we're putting these top leaders through this program and we want to make sure it sticks. So if we want to make sure it sticks, we need to provide some sort of resources and support for them through coaching. So we have coaching that happens in response to debriefs from Leadership Circle Profile is the instrument that we're using for this program, and then coaching that happens after that. So the follow-up coaching, the follow-up cascade, the follow-up work with the teams, the leadership teams of the leaders going through them, the programs, and just making the stickiness happen and giving the skills to the leaders to continue the vocabulary, the framework, the knowledge, so that they do the work, so that we're not being the ones that are relied upon to do that. So that's how I'm seeing it being used effectively currently in the organization in which I work.
Great. Just curious, for the Leadership Circle Profile, which I'm a big fan of that tool as well, are you doing one-on-one coaching interpretation for everyone?
Yes.
Yeah.
And for the top leaders, for the ones for whom that is the most applicable, yes. And then for those that do not take it but are just taught the framework, because the norm group is not appropriate for them to be, receiving that data and be compared against. They don't get that, but they get the framework introduced to them, and not a self-assessment, but a self-assessment in terms of that they do it themselves without having to do the instrument, without going and getting a report and thinking that the report is, oh my God, this is me. So
Right.
it's in the moment, basically, in the moment on the mat.
Excellent, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, we've incorporated the Leadership Circle now into term 3 of the EBC program, so it'll be one of the tools we'll be using.
It's a very popular tool.
Absolutely. So third question is, what do you see as the primary role of a coach versus an OD consultant, and how can they be used together effectively? And let's start with Dr. Myers.
All right, primary, but that's a big question. What first is coming up for me, Terry, is helping the client, which is whether it's an individual or a team, understand what they deeply embodied before this change was needed. And then helping them discover or articulate what do they need to have as an individual or as a team, and then how they get there. So it's not a one and done it kind of thing. Sometimes it takes weeks or months working with the individuals and the team. Often we'll work with a team over 6 months for probably 8 or 9, 10 days, spread over months, 2 or 3 days at a time, and in between with the individual. But if they increase their awareness and attention to who they are in the change and be in a mutual commitment to each other, which I think believe the coach and the OD, wear both hats there, helps them construct that, and then figure out what they need to unlearn and what they need to bring on, and then the practice is there. So that's a mouthful, but I'll stop there.
Okay, great. Let's hear from Raquel.
So I think for our space as organizational consultants, we help people see the big picture. We're a really, really big organization, and unfortunately a little bit stovepiped. So sometimes people are kind of down in their mission, they're doing their task every day, all day, and they don't see how it fits in the bigger picture, the bigger strategy of the agency. So for me, when I play an organizational consultant role, I kind of help them bridge that gap. Where does their mission fit in? What are they doing every day that's going to fit in with the bigger strategy? And then if we're going to go into coaching on the coaching side of the house, it's really helping them get there. So recognizing the gap and then like really helping them move forward with that.
Great. Excellent. Thank you. Dr. Carl.
So a very similar answer to Raquel in the, well, I guess I could be cheeky and say the consultant answer is it depends, right? It all depends on the situation you're in. But the overall goal for the OD roles when I play them are an enterprise perspective. So looking at what's going on in the entire organization, making sure that we're in alignment with where the entire organization's going. We're not duplicating efforts. We're sharing best practices. We're breaking down silos. And the people are not just, again, siloing themselves and not looking at their stakeholders' needs and the entire enterprise and environment. From an additional OD consultant responsibility would be upskilling as well. There'd be some sort of upskilling and then letting go. And so once you've upskilled the client, to then confirm that they are using those skills with their direct reports, with their teams, with their entire organizations, and making sure that they're holding themselves accountable for the results that they want to accomplish and doing the check-ins and coaching them through any difficulties or challenges that they're having. So they do go hand in hand for sure. And I'm seeing more and more HR business partners taking on more, originally the trend was consulting roles and now being trained in coaching skills so that they can empower their clients, the leaders of the organization as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm curious, what do you think has driven that trend for HR to take on more coaching roles specifically? Are they getting pressure from management or teams, or what is driving that in your mind?
So I think the role of the HR business partner is evolving, and you've seen, or you can see that even some job descriptions are requiring the HR business partner to be a combination of HR business partner and OD consultant. Mm-hmm. So as part of, if you cascade down the role of OD, coaching can fall under the role of OD for sure, executive coaching. So that's, originally we saw that evolution happen with the HR business partner needs to be a consultant. And how do you get consulting skills? And what questions do you ask as a consultant? And what kind of support do you provide that way? So now we're seeing it evolve even more into now it needs to be a coach. And a lot of that is that the HR business partners are becoming more strategic. The role is becoming more strategic. That's a trend that's been in effect for the past 20 years or so, where it's been said that, oh, they're going to become more strategic. They're going to become more strategic. It's not going to be personnel. It's not going to be the administrative and the tactical and all that aspect of it. So that's why as they upskill and evolve into a more strategic role, they also have to be more coaches as opposed to consultants or tactical police, if you want to look at it that way.
And Raquel, I know you're internal as well, so I'd love to hear your perspective on this.
Yeah, so it's interesting. We have kind of gone to this feedback culture. We've changed our whole performance management system around it. So we don't have any ratings anymore. We're going just through feedback. So a lot of times I think people are trying to figure out what they're supposed to do, especially our very tactical managers who are used to kind of winding around the score. And so I think we are being kind of asked, it's interesting, before we used to have to prove our credibility, and now we're being asked to come in and teach people how to coach, managers how to coach and develop people, because it's an expectation. So I think for us, that's what's driving it. Coaching is now a big competency in every manager's, job jar, I guess.
Yeah, once you start using feedback as your primary development tool, coaching is really important. I would agree with that. Excellent. Dee, I'm curious from your perspective, what are you seeing in this space?
Oh, absolutely. Wonderful. Some of the work we've been doing the last 2-3 years with our clients is to help them redefine that typical HR role, to move from operational to strategic and have a seat at the table in the C-suite and be in the boardroom. So if you look at our website right now, you can see that one of our clients is asking us to find somebody who is high level strategic, can lead HR and be talent management, be org structure, be the coach. I think those are hard shoes to fill right now. So it's needed to have an internal support for the org change and to make sure the right people are in the right seats. So, and I love it when this role reports directly to the CEO. So that's a bit of the work that we're doing.
Great, excellent. So next question is, what are the best ways OD professionals can leverage coaching in their work? Who'd like to start?
I can start.
All right, Dr. Carl.
So, and I think, Terry, I think we worked on a project together as independents several years ago. I think it's the integration of so you don't have an event. So you just don't have a training event or an initiative, and it becomes known as a flavor of the month, and then you drop it. So if you have a program, an objective that you're trying to accomplish, you just don't do one thing and expect it to happen. You actually need to show the support and provide resources to support your leaders and the organization in adopting the new mindset, going through the leadership development program, doing the culture change, whatever it is. So whatever the intervention is, needs to be coupled with something that's going to make it sticky. And really the only way to do that is through providing support through coaching. And there are many different ways to do that. It could be training the organization to have people that are peer coaches, peer coaches of each other to support themselves through it. You could do, obviously, the full-fledged executive coaching. Everyone gets an executive for X amount of time. You could do that's a very cost-effective way if the organization has some financial constraints, or depending on what level they want to provide the coaching to. So there are many different ways to provide that, and it's really about showing the support, showing that the organization really intends for this to happen, and it's not a flavor of the month, and supporting a change effort, the transformation, a culture change, a mindset shift that's only going to take effect with that type of support.
You know, I just want to build for a second on what you're saying. I have seen over the last, especially 8 years, a real movement from progressive, especially Silicon Valley companies, which I know is where you're located, Carl. And I do a lot of work in that space as an executive coach. Some of the major firms do not do standalone training anymore. They just assume it will have follow-up coaching, and they call it reinforcement. And it's just a standard process of helping the classroom or online face-to-face training stick through reinforcement and practice and skill development. And you know, I think in the future this will be a standard process. And it's not just for senior leaders anymore. It's what I call a democratization of coaching is a real thing, and a major trend that I think will just continue to grow, actually. And certainly organizations like BetterUp and there's many others, they're not the only one that are offering coaching for first and second level managers in a wholesale fashion at very large companies. So I'm very excited about that and how it's you know, transforming education, in my opinion, especially in the corporate space, but even in schools at this point. You know, Rice University offers every single student a coach when they enter the program. The entire university has coaching available to them. Of course, they got a $50 million grant from an alum to do that. So it's really wonderful to see that happening in higher ed as well. So I'd love to hear, I could see you nodding your head, Raquel, so I'm sure you got something to say here about this. So I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, so I'm excited. So I'm a BetterUp coach in the evenings, obviously, and I work for my as an internal coach in the day. So I get to really see that dichotomy. We are a bit of an old-fashioned organization where the C-suite gets the coaches. That's maybe budget reasons or just tradition. But I'm also now seeing in the BetterUp model where they're pushing it down to the first line and mid-level managers. I'm really excited about that because I think that's where culture change happens. If you can teach them right at that first line, you know, how to improve their coaching skills, you're going to kind of spread that throughout the company. And not that my senior leaders don't deserve and need it, but a lot of times they're kind of in a place where what they're doing is working. so they it's a little bit harder to change that mindset.
Great.
So
Excellent.
which is kind of interesting to see that dichotomy.
Thank you. So Dee Dee, let's any thoughts you have on this?
Love it all. What I'm hearing is from the outside perspective, you're external, definitely going in to a project that where the lines between OD and coaching might blur is keep it clean. Declare what role you're in. If you're doing OD work, you say this is OD work, and if they start moving into the coaching space, then you have to, as you know, declare the change. So keep it clean, and you'll dance that. So I would just say be really, really careful about it, and it gets easier. If there's a conflict of interest, you need to declare that. I love what I'm hearing here. We're also in this space with the emerging leaders. So it's not just the board and the C-suite anymore. With what's going on with retirees and the gap in leadership, we're paying a lot of attention right now on the structure, the OD structure for the younger professional, and helping them coach up. And they're actually starting to coach up to the C-suite and helping their C-suite. So very exciting times out here for the OD/coach professional.
Yeah. So you bring up a really good point, Dee Dee, about boundaries and really ethics. You didn't use that word, but that would be part of what I would describe it. Could you say a little bit more about that? What might be some of the potential ethical challenges that in a coach, both external and internal, who also does OD? How do you navigate a little bit of that? Because I'm sure you do it every day.
Yeah, well, with our coaches, we're real heightened awareness on when you're saying, oh, you should do this versus using the coaching perspective. And I notice in some of the work, like people are crossing the line, so we're actually just helping them stay fine-tuned with the ICF credentials there. And it's having that conversation. Like, for example, we're starting a new engagement. The CEO. Somebody needs to mute here.
I'm listening. So whenever you guys are ready.
Hello, someone just joined. I'm not sure who it is, but trying to figure that out. I think it may have cleaned up. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so just for an example, started some work with a new CEO. We just signed a contract today. Well, what should our org structure be 5 years in the future? And that's a vacuum to fill. Like, for me, it's like, yeah, we can do that, but let's figure out what your vision is, your strategy. So you have to know the business too, and you have to talk to the people. So I said, let's put OD on hold. Let's talk to your people. Let's work with them, and then co-create what the future could look like in terms of a structure. And, sometimes I feel myself tugging between the two, and I'll just declare that to the client, say, okay, here's where I am right now. And we work it out together. But what goes first might change with each client. So it's not clean, Terry. I don't know if I'm making sense here. It's not clean, but that attention and awareness is really important.
Yeah. And I think from my perspective, one thing that's important is for OD professionals to get coach training, because oftentimes people will use the word coaching in a very kind of laissez-faire, informal way, and they may not really know even how they define that or what's coaching versus consulting. And so I think that's important in my mind to, if you're going to say you're an internal coach or an external coach, having some credentials and formal training is important, so that you can distinguish between the two and educate your clients, because it can get very messy very quickly if you're not careful about that. So I would agree. I see everyone else nodding as well. What do you think are the consequences of embarking on an OD project without the support of coaching? If coaching isn't part of the equation, what do you think happens to OD projects?
So I can continue. I answered that slightly before, but it really, I think, is about the stickiness. So not only will the projects not be as supported, there won't be resources that will be made available to help people in seeing how
the work is being cascaded, how it's being implemented, how it's being received, what challenges are happening, and what you can coach the leader around doing to make it more effective for the rest of the organization to receive. But also it does prevent that the feeling of a flavor of the month or magic bullet or just this, take this training and everything will be okay, and swallow this pill and you'll never gain any more weight again, whatever it is. So it does need to have the support in order for it to stick, to last, to take effect. And that way you can also hopefully be able to see where the needle moves, see what the metrics are, be able to establish some metrics about, what was the baseline, what were things like when you first started, and then how are they different 6 months later down the road or a year down the road, hopefully.
Absolutely, I agree. Dee Dee, any thoughts on this? What have you seen happen?
First thing that comes up for me is that if the OD or the transformative suggested change is not supported by coaching, it's going to produce a big contraction and constriction in the organization. People, I think, will feel that a sense of change in culture. They'll feel that what they care about is not listened to. Lack of engagement will be impacted. People, the sense of empowerment, to use that word, using my full self at work, will be hampered. I think there's a lot of risk to making sure that you have the financials that you need. If you're stockholder owned or you're a nonprofit, it's not going to happen real easily. It's going to be tough. Big risk in ours is like, because we get asked to assess, are the leaders able to make the change? So that's part of the work we do. So we use the OD and the coaching, and that's a risky place to go if you don't support the OD with coaching the people.
Yeah. Raquel, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
So I think for me, it's the accountability piece that gets lost. I mean, I think it's the initial excitement around whatever fix we're going to adhere to, and that's what people want, a quick fix, right? But then it's easy to sort of say, okay, that was great. And then they run off and nobody's really being held accountable. And I think when you're sitting with somebody and you're coaching, you are holding them accountable. They are part of the solution or the problem. It's not like, oh, well, Fred and Susan and pointing out all of these excuses. So for me, it is really that accountability piece that the coaching can help with.
Great. Yeah, I think I would agree. Accountability is a huge piece. I describe accountability as caring enough to ask, right? How's it going and what help do you need? And if we don't do that often with large OD interventions, we just, assume they're going to happen or drive them top down without sufficient support for individuals or teams. I've seen that a lot before. One last question, and then we're going to open it up to the team and the group live today. What advice do you have for other OD professionals wanting to develop professional coaching skills? So maybe they've been listening to this call and saying, I need to get with program and learn some coaching skills to augment my OD practice. What advice would you have for them?
Get certified. Do the work, become credentialed, stay in the learning, and do your own work. Have a great coach. Move along and be supervised. Work with others, learn from others. Just do the work.
I think you bring up a really key point here about doing your own work, right? Coaching is not only about coaching others, it's about getting coaching. Really powerful.
Yeah, exactly what Dee Dee said. And look at the different coaching programs. See which one aligns with what you want to do, what kind of direction you want to take your coaching or your business or your practice or even just your own self-development in, so that there's an alignment in the values and the culture of the program that you're selecting. I say go for Fielding, of course, because I had a fabulous experience there and met amazing people, diverse set of people, and got wonderful training and wonderful network. So definitely go for Fielding. But if that's not your cup of tea, find out what your cup of tea is and select that. You're going to get a great education in anything that's ICF certified or accredited. And again, just as Dee Dee said, and what you said, Terry, it's get coaching yourself, because you also need the self-awareness and not getting trapped in some of the areas so that you can best support your clients, your coaching clients. Just do it. And get started sooner rather than later, because life only gets more and more complicated the longer you wait. So just do it sooner rather than later. One of my greatest, not a regret, but I wish that the program that I went to at Alliant had some sort of coaching certification that went along with it for the PhD, or even said that you could do this as an elective, or some sort of way of getting that added to it. And I do look at organization development as a field that really is an umbrella to executive coaching being under it, as a subset of it. They're different. Obviously, you're wearing a different hat when you're doing it, but it is a subset of organization development. You need the coaching to be able to get the organization to develop.
Yeah, I would argue certainly every OD professional needs coaching skills. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
There are a lot of coaches out there that aren't OD professionals, though, so the opposite probably isn't true.
Right.
Yeah. Certainly, if you're going to be a serious OD professional in this day and age, it's important to have coaching skills. I would agree. Raquel, how about your perspective on this? What would you recommend to
Well, I mean, I think just the awareness is the first step, because I think I had been doing a lot of OD work for many years and doing coaching skills, but I guess I didn't realize that I had been doing it. So I think once I got the framework to the coaching program, I was able to differentiate between, like, okay, this is clearly, I'm in an organizational development consulting role versus I'm in a coaching role. And it helped me get really clear about the boundaries, where before I think I was a little bit on the edge of doing both. So I love that it provided a framework to be really clear on what I was doing.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. So we would like now to hear from our live audience. So if you have a question, please put a note in the chat room, or go ahead and unmute yourself and say your first name, and go ahead and ask your question. Anyone from the audience that would like to ask a question? So don't. I see Lisa has posted. Lisa, do you want to go ahead and show up live at the moment? You can unmute yourself and ask your question.
That's all right. You're welcome to read it. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'd be happy to read it on your behalf. So in your experience, panelists, do you believe a combined role of OD/HR specialist/partner and coaching role, or separate defined coaching role, to be more effective based upon serving and supporting organizational needs and maintaining efficiency and minimizing conflict and challenges toward potential solutions? So I think the question is, do you think that role should be a combined role, or do you think it's better to have separate coaches?
I'm going to go with the safe answer of it depends. And I think it depends on the size of the organization. It depends on the maturity of the organization. It depends on the talent and the skills of the individual providing these services. It's a luxury to be able to have an HR partner and then a separate OD partner working together, because they do end up really intertwined. We do partner all the time together at Genentech, and it's a very strong partnership.
Mm-hmm.
But that is a luxury. Most organizations don't have that as an internal option. Some of them have a combination of HR business partners and then external consultants that they have. It's probably a little bit more difficult to stay in tune, because you don't see them necessarily every day. But if you have a really strong strategic HR business partner that is also able to do organization development and coaching, it's going to be more difficult for them to, which hat are they going to be wearing in the situation? But having the ability to have those multiple perspectives is going to be so valuable for the business and the leaders that they're supporting. So it really depends. It depends on budgets. It depends on acuity, it depends on maturity of the organization as well as the role that they have. So yeah, it depends.
Okay, great explication.
Yeah, I mean, that I'm going to jump in on that because I think it's sort of the readiness of the organization. Occasionally, when I have to be more directive, I would come in as more of an HR consultant because they need to hear what's going on and they need me to be more directive. Where in a coaching approach, I would be more collaborative and I would not be giving advice or being directive, and you know, it would be much more of a collaboration. So I think it's the readiness and where the organization is. And are they ready? Because not everybody's ready for coaching. They're not ready to put the work in.
Yeah.
Really good point. Edie, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, the question seems to be written from an internal perspective, but I'll do an external view here. What we've evolved to is we're a company that wants to help other organizations be successful. So we see both are needed. So we have a team of people who have both the OD and the coaching, and then we have people who just are the coaching, who will work with the OD and coach. So they're all going together in the same way. But I believe that the fact that we have both the OD and the coaching really helps our clients better understand what their potential is and how to move forward on that. So that's what our company's been structured to be, very entrepreneurial and boutique. So we do what we love. And I think that helps us enjoy our work a lot. And that the OD and the coaching are sweet spot for us right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have been internal for 11 years at HP in the past, and I've been external for 11 years. And so I kind of have both perspectives at the moment. And I think my opinion is there are certain cases where it's really important to have the coaching role be independent. And I think it's specifically useful for highly confidential situations where you're really working on individual issues. I think where OD and coaching best fit is in team coaching, in my opinion. And I don't know actually if you could be a great team coach without a little bit of OD experience, right? That is one area where team coaching and OD tend to be kind of blurry to me from my perspective. So it's important to have some group process knowledge and information about organizational dynamics, which you get in OD school, that often coaches don't necessarily always have under their belt, depending on which program you go through. So it's really helpful to have that combination. But it is interesting, when to have external, when to have internal, when should you have these blending of roles. I think it's also a challenge for confidentiality for HR people sometimes, because they'll one meeting they'll be having their HR hat on, where you might be recommending termination or coaching people around some very serious HR policy issues. On the other hand, you got the coach hat on and you're trying not to give advice. So those are very different roles, where you're trying to get the manager to figure it out versus they just need your professional consulting as a HR leader. So that can be quite challenging, I think, sometimes to play both roles.
Terry, that's a great point you're building up. You're bringing up, because we didn't talk about the specific role of coaching for development as opposed to fixing a problem or the person's going to get fired, right? Mm-hmm. So we definitely want to make that differentiation of saying, when you are in a coaching role, you're doing this for development without any retribution or punitive outcomes. Whereas when you're in an HR role, as you just said, it's not going to be necessarily coaching if you're in this role of, okay, here's, your 3-step plan to exit the company, or here's, your written warning, or whatever it is. So that's a differentiation we need to bring up too.
Yeah. And the clients could be quite confused sometimes.
Exactly.
Who are you today? Are you my OD consultant, my HR enforcer at times, or are you my coach who's just let me say whatever's on my mind.
Right.
So
You're
yeah,
absolutely right.
that's really tough. Yeah. So we have time for a couple more questions. Anyone else that would like to join the conversation live today from our live audience? And feel free to either type in your question or unmute yourself and join us.
Hi, Terry. It's Michael Cullen. I would just add to the issue of confidentiality, and what Carl just brought up too is the whole idea of ethics. So it makes an ethical soup, if you will, if too many roles get blurred and the responsibilities and the boundaries are crossed. And so I definitely am siding towards separation of church and state when it comes to coaching. And I also, of course, would have to put in a plug for coaching supervision for all those coaches who are working with organizations, because it's almost impossible not to get caught up in the culture and the politics, etc. You know, when you're working with people on teams and they're not getting along, as a coach, sometimes the option is, you know, I'm thinking of leaving this organization. I don't think that's a topic you could definitely bring up with an HR person, because then they would be placed in a conflict of interest themselves in terms of having to deal with this issue. Whose side are they going to fall on? But I find as a coach, when that comes up and they start exploring their options, oftentimes they realize, you know what, I think it's better off if I try and make this work here. It'll also help serve me going forward, and no matter what other team I have. In other cases, it may actually be a better thing for them to leave, and for the betterment of the team as a whole. So I think that's where, as a coach, you really give them that sense of awareness, accountability, and responsibility that's not colored by roles and responsibility of, let's say, an HR person or an OD person whose mandate is to make things work, period, type thing.
So thank you, Michael, for bringing that up. Go ahead, Carl.
No, make things work for the company.
Yeah, exactly.
It is interesting. I think as an internal coach, especially if you're OD and HR as well, you know, where do your primary loyalties lie? You know, it's usually, this is an ongoing challenge for any executive coach, whether internal, external. But I think it's especially challenging when you're wearing multiple hats. So one of the things I strongly recommend after having played both roles is, in the past, I think internal coaches were a little bit loose on contracting. And I strongly recommend these days, for ethical and clarity of role, that they have written contracts for internal clients, so that it's very clear, you know, and that when you set a coaching meeting up, that you make it clear that this is a coaching session. It has a set time, a start and end time. And the same for teams. If you're doing team coaching, to contract with that even internally, that the team all signs, and there's a written agreement on roles and responsibilities and what will be shared and will not be shared. You know, not only is that a requirement for ICF's credentialing, I think it's just best practice, given the complexities. So I say, please do it. I think it's a great thing to have ODN coaching, but these are just some protections for the clients as well as the consultant and coach to get clarity. So I'm just curious about what best practices you guys have in the space at the moment in your own work. Oh, Raquel.
Terry, I'll comment on that a little bit, because, you know, I kind of laugh because this perception of when you're internal that there's no cost, so therefore your time is free, and so we do find sometimes the whole, it's a little bit loose, you know, about scheduling. People don't seem to be as accountable. We do contract, but there is this perception. And when we bring in an outside consultant, or when I work as an outside consultant, boy, do they take it seriously, because you're being paid by their company to come in. So it is a really different perspective. You just have some different credibility issues. There's pros and cons. Pros is, you know, that company inside and out, so you can help steer them. But people do have that sort of, they want to trust you, but there is that definitely, they're a little worried. They want to make sure that you're really for them and not just for the company.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are big on confidentiality. So when we start an engagement, definitely we'll contract. Sometimes we bring in the supervisor, especially if it's performance related or succession related. So we're all on the same page. So we do that. We also are really big on confidentiality. We do, if they cancel at the last minute and they abuse it, we do have a cancellation fee. You know, because so we do that. So they don't do that more than once typically, but very rarely do they even do it once. But we definitely follow what the structure should be and the guidelines for contracting and ethics and confidentiality. I think obviously it helps the client open up more so we can help them evolve into who they want to be and how they want to be.
Great.
So in Genentech and in prior roles, if the coaching is a result of like a 360-degree feedback, usually that first debrief session, there's only verbal agreements about what the extent is of that one-time coaching. Obviously, when that extends beyond just that one time, then we do have the more formal agreements that we engage in.
That's great. It's good to know as the field is evolving that more rigor and clarity is being developed for all these processes. That's great. So I just want to give first of all, any last questions from the audience? We probably have time for one more quick question. Going. All right, I'm going to give our panelists each a moment to offer any closing comments that you might have for our listeners today. So let's start with Dr. Myers.
Yeah, thank you. Glad to be here. I've appreciated listening to other professionals and I've learned today some different things and learned a few things I forgot. So that's a reason why to keep doing the work and stay in it and be in conversation with great people like this today. The world needs people with strong coaching skills and who understands and practices OD. There's plenty of business right now for that. So find your space, find your sweet spot, work it, and be dynamite in it.
I also appreciated being part of the panel. Thank you. And coaching is being seen as a more and more important and relevant skill set by organizations who are willing to pay for coaching for not only their leaders, but also further down into the organization, and their employees to get coaching skills to be able to coach internally as well. So the field is growing. Get in on it if you aren't already. And it's just the way to make sure that people are supported, organizations and leaders are developed, and concepts are just continued rather than forgotten.
Thank you.
So for me as an internal coach and as an external coach, just continue to look outward. It's really, really easy to get sucked into the problem when you're working internally. So I push myself to find out what the best practices are on the outside. I continue with community of practices like this because I just don't want to get so insular that I become part of the problem internally and not part of the solution. So keep growing.
Great.
Great
Well,
point.
thank you all for joining today and sharing your wisdom and your experiences and your advice, even though coaches don't give advice. Sometimes we can in these webinars to hear your perspectives. And again, thanks Dee Dee, Carl, and Raquel, and we look forward to our continued collaborations. I do just want to have a couple of quick announcements before we wrap up this evening. If you have not yet joined the coaching community of practice, I highly recommend that you consider joining. And it's easy to do so. You just go to coach.fielding.edu and you can click right here on the community of practice. It'll tell you all about the great things we're doing, our annual conference, our different programs. We do twice a month webinars, and opportunities for continuing coach education. So if you click on the subscribe button, we will add you to a Basecamp where you can share your own thoughts and include the various requests for help or offers for employment. We also have an EBC blog. On our EBC blog, you'll see all our upcoming webinars. So the one we just finished today is here. The next one coming up is the Understanding Developmental Readiness for Coaching. And this is what we call our EBC Thought Leaders webinar, which is primarily about research. So we are very fortunate to have Jacqueline Bashara, who is a doctoral graduate of Fielding, who will be sharing her dissertation research. So Fielding is, we believe, the global leader in coaching research at the doctoral level and postdoctoral level. We have over 50 dissertations dedicated to coaching and growing every day. So stay tuned for, we have already eight different scholars lined up over the next months to share their research in coaching. And of course, if you miss any of our webinars, you can always watch them, which are recorded. You can see here from our coach.fielding.ebc. Click on our professional series webinar and then watch those as well. Oops, I can see one of them just started by accident. So you can see how that all works. So please join the community of practice. Join us on future calls. And if you miss any of them, you can always watch them via recording. So have a good evening, everyone. I look forward to talking to you and seeing you live in one of our future events. And thanks again to all of our panelists.
Thank you, Terry.
Terry.
Thanks, panelists.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.